All right, so let's get to cooking. All right. So this is my first time cooking on the show, so hopefully things won't explode while I do this. So this is the broccoli walnut brain booster. And I guess we should get the ingredients to come up first. Let me just put that up there so that you guys can see the ingredients. So what we're doing here, and I'll explain a little bit more about the fruits. We're going to get to that category. But I like to use fruit juices oftentimes as a base. Often these kind of very powerful juices, which have been shown in many studies to improve memory, verbal fluency, all these kind of things. So I like to use it as a base here. So what I'm going to do is put some fluids in here. I'm going to lower this a little bit. I've got to get used to this. So add some pomegranate juice to that. I have some nice sliced tomatoes here. I'm going to add that in here, and then we're going to jack up the heat. So hopefully. All right, there we go. So right now, since we're not adding a lot of fluid here, I'm going to seal it. And one of the, I think, important things to learn as principles, probably maybe Chef Martin will talk, is fluid management. You know, how much, how thick, how consistency, and also I like to have like a little bit of water on the side in case I go a little too thick or I need to add a little bit more because some concentrated and I don't want to burn what's going on there. So constantly keeping an eye on that. That's one of the, I think, the critical skills that you'll learn doing this diet is that fluid management. I also add a little bit of chipotle spice. I love chipotle spice. Has that little smoky flavor. It's actually jalapenos that have been smoked and then dried. A little goes a long way in that regard, but I love that kind of like extra smokiness and heat there that we're doing there. So what we're basically doing is trying to break down the tomatoes a little bit so they're just kind of like a little more saucy in this case. I actually have my little stir here. So we'll just kind of stir this up. All right, we got to jack this up again. So we'll let that cook for a couple minutes. You know, some of us with tomatoes have lycopene in it, a very powerful carotenoid that not only helps with like prostate cancer, helps with melanoma, but it also helps the brain. Actually, a lot of people don't realize that it's actually a very effective antioxidant and anti-inflammatory for the brain. We want those bright, beautiful colors. We want to keep consuming them, a large diversity of those, and they actually have a great impact in our whole body. So diversity is really important in getting a wide spectrum of those phytochemicals. So as this is starting to cook away, and I'm trying to get used to this oven and how quickly it does, let's see here. So as you're starting to break down, what you're looking for is trying to get the skins to kind of relax a little bit and kind of open up. I like using, these are grape tomatoes here. They generally, even when it's not in season, they generally can retain most of the sweetness. With that the big tomatoes don't typically hold until you're back in like the season, which is more like in the summer for tomatoes. All right, so we're just going to expedite this along. I don't want to take too much time here, but basically you're cooking the tomatoes down, they're breaking in the skins over there. Then we're adding in some edamame. We add some corn. So that's a classic combination for a lot of people. Love that combination of corn and edamame. I think corn and edamame and corn and avocados certain foods just seem to go together and just love each other. So why not let them love each other on our plate? So what we're doing here, and I guess we can show over here in the pot. So what we're doing here is just trying to see how much fluid is on here and how much you want to be on the end of the plate. Do you want it to have a little bit of fluid, runny fluid on there? Do you want to have it really tightened up and not like that? So that is up to you. You can make it your own. What I generally do, I learn these basic fundamental principles and the principles you're learning, and as quickly as I can, I make it my own because I think it's just more creative and more fun that way. So as you're cooking that down, basically most of the time, one of the easy things about edamame, instead of having to soak it and all that, you can get it frozen and just put it in there. And it actually is one of the foods that tastes pretty good even when it's frozen afterwards. And the texture stays pretty solid on that way. So you can see right now that the tomatoes are actually starting to break down. You can see that they're and that's what we're kind of looking to have, that kind of thing. And then everything else is kind of cooked through. What I like to do at this point, we have 8 cloves of garlic. So I'm kind of like, yes. So I put here, I'm going to put some garlic in right now. So what I like to do is, because the onion family has some very powerful sulfur compounds that are very healthy for your immune system. And they do get broken down a little bit from cooking. So what I like to do sometimes, because I don't want to drive people away, is like when you cook them, you mute the flavor basically of these, and it becomes more of this kind of more muted, gentle flavor. It loses some of that bite. The more you cook it, the less bite you're going to get, and the more sweeter it becomes. And then what I like to do is do things in layers. So as you are putting in the garlic, and then at the end, I like to hit it with some fresh garlic and mix it in there, again, so I don't scare my guests in the process. But if you cook it down, actually, those cloves, it may sound like not a lot. It actually really isn't. So as we're cooking this, it's looking pretty good at this point, I think, at the end. So one of the things is layering your meals. So right now, we've been using, it didn't matter. I wanted the tomatoes to kind of be cooked down. I did want just the heat through the corn and the edamame, but the broccolini that I'm going to use here, you want that al dente. It's fresh, it's great. If you and you cook the hell out of it, I think you kind of lose a lot. Texture is extremely important in flavor. Just think of the difference between eating a fresh apple and then having applesauce. It has a very different effect on your palate. So at the end, then I like to take the fresh vegetables that we're going to use, put them on in here. And then we're just going to cook this till it's al dente, or as it says here, crisp tender. And broccoli actually often has these powerful compounds too called isothiocyanates, and you want to chop them up to actually activate those compounds prior to. Actually, I usually do it at the beginning of the recipe. My onions and my cruciferous vegetables, I chop them up first and I put them aside, because actually while they're on the side, they're actually having the chemical reaction and they're developing these really healthy compounds while you're doing your other things. It's like magic. If we could only just see that, as it's happening, we would see the magic that's actually unfolding before us. All right, so basically, you would just continue to cook this down. In time, I want to be able to move on to the next one, but what we do is I'm going to shut this off here. It would get to al dente, and then usually what I generally want to do is at the end, when they're off the heat, you add your fats, because generally you want to minimize how much you cook your fats, because fats will oxidize. So this is a beautiful, almond butter that we're putting in here, good in vitamin E. Those things can get actually destroyed if they're heated too much. So what I'd like to do is, generally I would have it put off the heat. I'm not going to put it on this table, but generally I would take it off and put it on another burner, and then I would add the almond butter here to thicken it up, which gives it that kind of I love almonds because it has that kind of earthiness too. It kind of makes it, you feel that kind of groundedness. And sometimes when you're eating a lot of plant-based stuff, you want that kind of earthiness. You want to kind of balance that out. Sometimes for some people, they just like that. And then of course at the end for some crunch, I'm going to try to crunch these up a little bit more. I put some almonds, some walnuts here, which is high in those omega-3 fatty acids that we're talking about. We're talking about the broccoli. It has those isothiocyanates. They're not only healthy for your liver, they're also the most powerful phytochemicals we know for anti-cancer. And actually, the sulforaphane, which is one of the isothiocyanates in broccoli, has been shown to prevent brain damage in several different studies. So really high in broccoli sprouts too. So if I had a person who had some kind of brain, when I have a TBI, a patient with traumatic brain injury, I have them eat broccoli sprouts, and among other things, curcumin would be another one that I would add in that circumstance. So at the end, it kind of has this look to it. Let's see if that was, I'll angle it so that you can kind of see it. So it's like a nice fest, has nice different colors. It looks colorful. You have the nice creaminess, and you can depend upon how the texture you kind of want, how thin or thick you want it. So that's your fluid management, and that's up to you.